So that's what we're talking about. Surrender can be sweet. Surrender can be easy, as Reverend Eric said. It's just as simple as a, wasn't that sweet? Just take a big breath and let it out and see how sweet you feel. Very, very, very sweet. And you know, when I think sweet, when I think sweetness, I think of this speaker that's coming up here. Just the sweetest, the most lovable, loving, just the kindest, nicest, with just a little bit of sass. So please welcome Reverend Tiffany Milne.
I bet you all thought he was talking about Eric. Okay. I'm going to figure out how this works real quick.
Well, I'm going to do it for you because that's how nice I am. Oh.
All right.
Aren't I sweet?
You're so sweet.
I'm going to surrender now.
So it's interesting that we're talking about sweet surrender because when I first heard the theme of the month, release, I thought of my favorite quote. When I think of release by David Foster Wallace that says, "Everything I've ever let go of has claw marks in it." So the title of my talk today is Claw Marks. And when I thought about that, first of all, that's how I lived my life for probably at least the first 35 years of this just clenched fist clinging on to everything. And what was really behind it was fear, right? If we really look at our inability to let go, it's that fear of the unknown. So of course, I always question everything, as Dr. James knows. And one of the things that I've really learned how to do in this teaching is to question the beliefs. So when my first thought was, everything I've ever let go of has claw marks in it, the first question was why? And when I looked at why, it was because of fear, the fear of the unknown, that idea of better the devil that you know, right? I'd rather stay in a bad relationship or a bad job or hang on to stuff that no longer serves me than the idea of what if, right? And we never ponder, we never think of the best case scenario, right? Like we're never like, if I leave this job, I'm going to become a millionaire and be living in a lavish, giant mansion on the beach. It's always like, I'm going to leave this job and then I'm going to be homeless and I'm going to be living out of my car and I'm going to be starving and oh my God, and life is going to end, right? We never ever ponder the greatness that could be on the other side. But see, quantum physics tells us that there is unlimited possibility, that in each and every moment, in each and every opportunity, there is an infinite number of possibilities. So why do we grab onto the negative ones? Why do we chew on it? And so again, I asked myself, why? And what I think it really comes down to is that we're afraid. We think that if I practice, if I rehearse the pain, if I rehearse what it's going to feel like to lose something that's important to me, that maybe it won't hurt so bad when it happens. And if I've learned anything in this lifetime, it's that you could never, ever rehearse the pain. What you can do is live it twice. We have the option of living the worst case scenario twice because you're never going to be prepared when it happens. But we can certainly torture ourselves with it for a while before it happens. And most of the bridges I've crossed run over waters that don't even exist. Most of the things that I have chewed up in my mind, that we have practiced and rehearsed, the other shoe dropping. We live in an entire society of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And we practice it and we rehearse it and then it never even happens. So what that means, quantum physics also teaches us, what we know about science is that the mind doesn't know if something is real or not. Our mind, whether we physically experience something or it only happens in our mind, the physical response that happens in our body is identical. It is the same as if it has actually happened. So what we've done when we chew up that worst case scenario is we've actually told our bodies and our minds and our subconscious that it has already happened to us. We already lived the worst case scenario. So then I thought, okay, we're becoming paralyzed in the now because we're busy worrying about what could possibly happen. And we're torturing ourselves now because of what we're afraid that can happen in the future. And that's what release is really about, right? Letting go of the outcome and trusting it and believing in the quantum, believing in this idea that there's an infinite number of possibilities. So what do I want to focus on? But see, I question everything. So if that's the truth, and I believe that it is, how do you do it? See, what was missing from so many of the books that I had read and the things that I had learned throughout my teaching or throughout the lifetime of being a seeker was, how do you do it? So I went on a hunt for, okay, this is this great idea, and yes, we should focus on the infinite possibility of good and stop gnawing on the infinite possibility of bad and waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I actually found the secret in Alanis Morissette song, of all places. In her song, Thank You, she says, how about no longer being masochistic? How about remembering your divinity? How about unabashedly bawling your eyes out? How about not equating death with stopping? When we focus on the truth, when we are so deeply rooted in the truth, when we trust and know, like we were talking about before, do I believe that we live in a universe of good? Do I believe that life is unfolding perfectly? Or do I believe in something else? Because I can't believe in both at the same time. She also says, the moment I let go of it was the moment that I got more than I could handle. And the moment I jumped off of it was the moment I touched down. Now, I didn't understand what those words meant because we always let go, release, surrender. Why would you say you got more than you could handle? And so I turned to, how do you do it, right? What does that mean? And when I was looking, I looked to treatment. And I recognized that the last step of treatment is release. The final step. We recognize the allness of the universe. We recognize that I am one with, I am it. I am the allness of the universe. We declare our truth. We move the energy. We set an intention that is steeped in the spiritual truth. Gratitude, and then release. And there's a reason. I had that aha moment. Gratitude comes before release. The thank you. When I live in that energy of thank you and gratitude. So when she says the moment I let go of it was the moment I got more than I could handle, how many times do we let go because we're forced to? Most of my let goes have been a screw it, not a release or a surrender, right? But when I understand the allness of the universe, when I understand that I live in an abundant, expansive world of good, and that I am one of it, that's the moment in that humility, in that grace, in that allness, that I release and I get it all. And we could never create claw marks with open hands. Namaste.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Really, that was really wonderful. And I had a question. So since I get to do that. First of all, I love this whole concept of claw marks, and what a great ending. You can never create claw marks with open hands. That is just so much of what you just said really moved me. But I want to ask you a question about this thing. I've crossed bridges over waters that were never there. Is that yours?
No.
Whose is that?
Probably that great guy Anonymous. I'm sure it's somebody's quote.
It really hit me. I was like, how many times have I... And here's the other thing. So do you think it's important for us to think about what could go wrong here? I know you run a company. So do you ever have to spend time in this could fall apart?
Yes, but I think it's more in the air of before we make a decision, we have to decide what the parameters of that decision, right? So the first thing that we do is we vision.
Yeah.
First thing we do is go into the expansive place. And then from there, we go, okay, where do we need to scale this back? What does practical look like? And then we do look for the areas where it could go wrong, but not from a place of fear.
Right, and that's what I was waiting for you to say. Because some people conjure up what could go wrong in their life from a place of fear. And in fact, as they're conjuring it up, they're embodying it. And you're right, whether we've lived it or not, we've just lived it. And yet there is a way to be cognizant and smart and go, this could happen here. I'm going to change something. So that's just critical thinking, but I don't have to bring fear into that.
Well, it's like I wear a mask and yet I'm not afraid. I
knew you were going to get that mask in here.
No, but I mean it's just such a symbol because because I can know the truth and walk in the world.
Yes.
I can have faith and believe and know my life is unfolding perfectly. And also go on a job interview before I quit the job I have. Like I can prepare without being afraid.
Right. That's great.
Of what my life looks like now.
Reverend Tiffany Milne.
Thank you.
Thank you. Woo. Okay. So now next up, he is sweet. Yes. So, when we decided to do service like this for a couple of weeks, where I bring in my star pupils and let them speak. This gentleman is actually very big and successful out in the world. He's creative, he's artistic, and yet he's found over these last few years, he has found a way to literally balance his spiritual life with his business life. And we've actually put a company together called Welcome Home, where we really focus a lot on what is it like to live this spirituality, exactly what Tiffany was just talking about. So please welcome Reverend Eric Overholtzer.
Thank you. It's interesting talking about balance and how we apply it to this teaching, because there's a lot of times in my life where I feel like life is very much out of balance. And as if a pendulum is swinging from one extreme to the other. So unlike Tiffany, there have been moments where I have quit a job with no plan. In fact, I've done that a couple of times in my life and in my career because I knew that there was more. There was something that was inside me on my spiritual path that I wanted to go and explore. So I took the leap. In fact, taking the leap. When I think of the Westlake community here, my first sort of integration with this community was skydiving with Reverend Mark Stewart, Brad Kiefer, Craig Lincoln, and myself. And I'd never done it before, but I thought should be fun. Dr. James was supposed to join us, but he backed out. Shocking. But it was a great day. It was a great time to really bond. And flying up into the plane all in your parachute gear. And I remember the moment of pure terror, sort of wondering what's on the other side. What's on the other side of your fear, and propelling yourself through it into the unknown. So this would be sort of what my experience was. Throw myself out of the plane, and then you have to pull the cord. You have to pull the cord, and then all of a sudden you pop up. So it goes from fear, terror, anxiety, oh my God, what the hell am I doing, to the person across from me literally having to pull my cord because I was in a total free fall. Talking about surrendering, it was surrendering, but not in a good way. So when they were saying, pull the cord, and I'm like, I thought they were pointing to the mountains. I thought it's like, oh, pretty view. And they said, no, pull the cord. And when it did, my experience completely transformed. It went from terror to the ecstasy of really, now it's the exhale of, hallelujah. So the title of my talk is Pull the Cord. However, this was not what I was expecting. Pull the cord. Completely different meaning. Pull the cord. I'm going to go to some notes here. So if I were to subtitle this talk after seeing this slide, I thought I could either abandon it or I could just dive into the unknown. I saw this slide last night. So I thought, well, at least I'll give it a subtitle. So the subtitle of my talk would be Pull the Cord, or as my uncle would say, pull my finger. But pull the cord, a perfectly good plane, a baffled king, a couple geniuses, and me. So we hit the perfectly good plane. To this day, why I jumped out of a perfectly good plane is beyond me, but I did. And what I learned in jumping out of a plane, talking about harmony, sometimes when we talk about surrendering, if we're at a beach and you go into the water and get caught in a riptide, if you resist it, it's going to pull you under. But when you surrender, you're going to pop out. That's just working with the laws of nature. However, when I threw myself out of a plane, I was in surrender to the law of gravity, in a free fall. And how many times does that happen in life where we feel like we're just free falling, and that we have no control and we have no power, until we do remember, or we are reminded, to pull the cord, to raise our mind up to a level of higher consciousness. Because in truth, we feel like we are a victim to the law of gravity, but the truth of the matter is there are several dynamics going in. There's the law of gravity, but there's also aerodynamics. So the law of air resistance is going on just as the gravity is going on, but the gravity is stronger. But the moment you make the choice, you make a different decision, you pull the cord, now you're in harmony between these two laws. You're working in harmony with the universe, and the experience transforms. So chords, a lot of guitar playing right now. What is a chord? You pull a string, and it's a vibrational frequency. You pull a couple strings, and then you've got the different frequencies vibrating together, and it makes music. So a baffled king. One of the most beautiful songs ever written, Hallelujah. And it starts with, well, I hear there's a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care about music, do you? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing Hallelujah. It's like going out of the airplane. Sometimes we have major falls. In reality, it's a minor fall. But there's the major lift. Pull the cord. Take your mind back up to a level of higher consciousness. Well, your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof. Her beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. And they're talking about King David, that little boy that slayed the giant, and then went on and became a great king, a moral authority. And then he saw the woman bathing on the roof, and he was succumbed to temptations, so the Bible story goes, and ended up having an affair, marrying her, having a child. He lost his moral authority, or so he thought. But in spite of that, he found that, and he played that magic chord of hallelujah. Hallelujah, finding the joy, finding the praise in whatever is happening in life. In fact, one of the later lyrics, it says, there's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter what you heard, the holy or the broken. Hallelujah. So when can we find the hallelujah, the joy in whatever's happening in life, whether it's politics these days, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's an economic surplus or crisis, the opportunity to bring our consciousness back up by finding the joy, by finding the love, by finding the gratitude. So it's part 2. Part 3, a couple of geniuses. Back to the parachute. Leonardo da Vinci, actually before Christopher Columbus even arrived here in the United States, invented and doodled and sketched the first parachute. It was a big epic idea. But the first parachute was actually executed in 1793, several hundred years after that first great idea, that first thought happened. Sometimes a great thought, it seems as if time needs to catch up to it. And which brings me to the next genius. I call this a rebel genius, and that'd be Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, as a kid, dropped out of school, and he went into the laboratory of his mind, what they said, his thought experiments. And it was in his thought experiments, in his imagination, that he really explored ideas into the laboratory of the mind rather than the laboratory of the out in a lab. And one of the greatest equations, the greatest gifts that he gave to the world, they say one of the most beautiful equations was E equals mc squared. The theory of relativity. In fact, but what he was really looking to get was the theory of everything, that interconnected aspect of all things. So E equals mc squared, E meaning energy, how much energy is in something. M equals mass. What is the mass? And then the C. And not only C, not C times 2, C squared. What does the C represent? The C represents the speed of light. So 167 million miles an hour. That's the speed of light. That's better than the 405 freeway on a Friday. 167 million miles an hour. And yet, Albert Einstein, in his mind, in his imagination, could catch up to that point as if he was riding a light beam. When the speed of light and an idea catch up, it's as if time stops. So when I see this image, this beautiful image that Alex did, that's what I see. It's almost like riding a wave, riding a light beam, and pulling the cord as if you're like surfing at the beach, but surfing at that state of consciousness where you can just reach in and then you can guide it and you can direct it. And finally, bring it back to me, the mental equivalent. Ernest Holmes talks about we're equal. Life shows up in a perfect equal proportion to how we use our mind. So how are we using the mind? How am I using the mind? How many times do I allow myself to go to that point of imagination, to really create all the possibilities, not from a place of fear, not from a place of lack, but from a place of, as last week as Liza spoke, pure potentiality. That's our opportunity to jump out of a plane, say yes to what's beyond the other side, be willing to pull the cord, take our mind and our heart and our soul up to a higher level and ride the light beam. That's the place of hallelujah. Thank you and namaste.